Thank you. I would have totally forgot.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and sorry we had to reschedule. But Sunday, the town right across the river from us, they had a big fully involved house fire, and it was right next to utility easements, and it caught them on fire, and the cable was out, TV was out, internet was out, so couldn't help it. But I'm glad to see you tonight, and thanks for spending part of your evening here. Lots of information tonight. I'm going to have a lot of links. And like Tiffany said, I'm going to post my script later in the Facebook group, and it'll have all the links in it. So the links for the pattern and all the extra helps will be there. So don't worry about taking down or trying to figure it out right now. So fall's here, and you know what that means. We've got football, falling leaves, pumpkin spice everything, and cooler weather, along with our charity request for winter wear. So this is our introductory class tonight to basic winter wear, hats and mittens. Later on, we'll have another class to show some advanced patterns at a later time. So we've got 3 charities right now that want winter wear. The first one is the Mental Health Resource Center in Jacksonville, Florida. They're requesting items for their homeless outreach program, mainly for adults, sizes small to extra large. And there's no color restrictions for them. However, remember that this is being handed out to homeless persons who do not have access to regular washing of items. So try to avoid lighter colors that will show more dirt for the Mental Health Resource Center. The second charity is Hope of Mountain. Now they asked for hats, sewn, knitted, or crocheted. And tonight we're just going to focus on sewing, obviously. And Hope of Mountain supports rural and tribal communities in the Northern Rockies and the Great Plains. We're kind of focusing on elementary age children, but actually the request is for all sizes from infant through adults of warm hats. And the third partner charity was just added on Friday. It's East River Foster Parent Network. They have support services for foster families and foster children in eastern South Dakota. And our target group for this charity is young kids about 5 to 10 years old. So they can be also sewn, knitted, or crocheted, but they need to be warm and very functional for the harsh winters in South Dakota. Now we've got so far 3 different charities, and there's 3 different ranges of temperatures that we're sewing for. So it can be confusing because we go all the way from Florida, where the low temperatures are around 30 to 40 degrees, to South Dakota and the Great Plains and the Rockies, where it can be brutally cold. So to help matters, so you can remember what to make, I've made a cheat sheet chart where you can find out. I put down the charity name and how cold it would be and what we're suggesting for layers and to use for that charity. Because obviously somebody in Florida will be fine with maybe a 1-layer fleece hat, but when you get to the cold ranges, that's not going to cut it. So you will find that link in this script that I'm going to post tonight. And it's just a little chart that'll help you when you go to figure things out. But for winter wear, I would like to have you guys put your thinking cap on and think, when you're thinking about what you're making, you have to ask yourself, are the things functional and do they do what they mean to do? When I mean functional, I mean like this is a mitten, yeah, but only it comes down to here. So functional, it's not really functional, although it is a mitten. So what we've done is tested different patterns to find things that will work better. I've got another one that we're using tonight that'll come down to here. So it's much warmer, a lot more coverage. And let me tell you, this pattern tester got fired, which was me. And we have a new pattern tester, so that's not going to happen anymore. But ask yourself, is what I'm making functional? Is the hat going to fit? Is it low enough to the ears? Is there enough coverage on the mittens? Do they keep the person appropriately warm for where they live? What's their winters like? Do they want 1 layer? Do they need 2 layers? Do they need a 3-layer? Is what you're making, is it the correct size for the charity? Go back to the project page and see, am I sewing for 5 to 10-year-olds or am I sewing for adults? Is my item durable? Is it washable? Or if it's not for somebody that can do laundry, is it in dark colors? So just think about what you're doing before you get started, and it's a lot easier. Also remember, when we're sewing for children, it's a real temptation to put little doodaddies and fringes and things on there. But please be careful, because that's a real big temptation for them to pick it off and maybe ingest it or inhale it, or cause trouble. So try to avoid putting anything like that that can be harmful for children. Last but not least, we want to make sure that we're sending high quality items to these people. Now, not only sometimes is this the only thing that they get, and we want it to be very nice for them, but remember, your time and your money and your efforts are worth a lot. It's valuable. So I would like to see you make maybe one thing that's nice than to buy something really cheap material and make 3. This isn't a contest as to how many we can make or how many we can pump out. I knew that there was a time when we were doing face masks, when we were really, really concerned because of the pandemic of getting things out quickly. But our pace is slowed just a little bit now to where we can pay attention to what we're using. So to that end, I want to go over some fabric recommendations. The choice of fabric is going to be a polar fleece. And polar fleece is nice and warm and soft and cuddly, and it comes in a lot of great colors and a great prints. The downside of it is that when it gets wet, it'll stay wet. Right now, we don't have any requests for water repellent mittens, and there is a way to make water repellent mittens. So for right now, and in this class, we're just going to concentrate on warmth. Now in polar fleece, I want you to think about what you're picking out. When you go to the fabric store, we talked about this before, let your fingers feel the fabrics. Is it nice and soft, or is it itchy and scratchy? Is it kind of plushy, or is it real thin? For example, Joann's has 3 different brands of polar fleece. The entry level and the cheapest is a blizzard fleece, which I'm not a big fan of. And I know they get it on sale and it's really inexpensive, but it doesn't last. We've tested these fleeces, so your investment in your time can be worthwhile. Pass on the blizzard. The next lineup is an anti-pill fleece. And you can tell an anti-pill fleece because it's smoother, it's softer. On the end of the boat, it'll say anti-pill. And also on the salvages now from Joann's, they're printing it. This I cut off the salvage. This is anti-pill, designed exclusively for Joann's. So read your salvages, because Joann's have started to print them on the salvage. So we like anti-pill. Anti-pill is really cool. And for those of you that get their flyers, this isn't a commercial for Joann's, but here's the newest Halloween flyer that came out. And they're going to have it 60% off Thursday through Saturday, October 7th through the 9th. And also to help defray the cost of buying your fleece or your Sherpa, whatever you are doing it. Sometimes they have a 50% off one cut coupon on the back too. So that will help you if you watch that. Now, the anti-pill was the middle layer. And if you could ever get your hands on this, oh, this stuff is excellent. This is their Luxe. See if you can see that. It says Luxe for Joann's. This Luxe fleece is just beautiful. It's nice, it's soft, it's warm. It doesn't pill up. It doesn't come into little rough little balls on it. It's beautiful. It is expensive, and I was able to snag a couple bolts of it when it was on the clearance. So go back to their dot section and look for clearance. But we've tested these lines in Joann's because that's all I have access to. So try to stay with the anti-pill and the Luxe when you're choosing your fleece. If you're lining hats and mittens, the fleece can be used for a second layer, or you can use minky or lightweight faux fur or a Sherpa. Now, this is a Sherpa that I got in the secondhand store, and it was a jacket from somebody, but it's in very, very, very good condition. And it's very clean. Don't use secondhand stuff that's not clean, but this is a very, very good piece of Sherpa. And if you are using two different types of material, like a fleece and a Sherpa, make sure that they both have the same stretch, because you want to have that give for when they pull it on their hand and when they pull it over their head. So it's got to have the stretch to it, just to make sure they both have the stretch. Make sure it's adequate enough for the pattern. Oh, enough of an introduction there. I want to start out with my newest favorite hat pattern. My newest favorite hat pattern is the basic fleece hat pattern by Fleece Fun. Let me get situated here. And there's a link on my notes to the website and also to a short YouTube video by Fleece Fun. Now, if you remember, Fleece Fun wasn't printing earlier, like a month or so ago. It was just printing out of whack. But Robin contacted the Fleece Fun people, and they corrected it, and they made their patterns even better to download. So I have no fear of them at all. I just went down and downloaded it. On the website, you'll see down there a place that you click that you want the pattern, and you have to put in your first name and your email address, and they'll email it to you. And they'll also email them newsletters, but you can unsubscribe to the newsletters at any time. But it's worth it to get this pattern. It prints out in 4 different sheets, 4 different panels. And it's really not that hard to put it together. I'm going to turn my camera around and I'll show you how easy it is to put it together. But make sure that you're printing from the PDF that they send you, and do not print from the web page, because the web page won't be scaled correctly. And when you print, make sure to have your printer set to 100% and use the test block that's on the page. Page number 1 has a test block right up here. These are test squares. This is the 1-inch test square. So if you put your ruler up to there and measure it out, it should be 1 inch square. So that's how you will test to see if you printed it correctly. And please do, because just a little bit is going to make a difference on here. So let me get my camera down on the different angle, and let's start to do a little bit of sewing tonight. Okay. Wait, I got to get her set up. Okay, come on. There we go. Now I can't really see myself real well, so if I've got a bad angle, somebody yell at me to make sure you can see them. Okay, back just a hair. There we go. That's pretty good. So here's panel 1 and panel 2 that I cut off and lined up, and you can see that's got a big diamond here. So you're just going to line it up and tape it together. Same way for 3 and 4. They've got diamonds that match, and you're matching up the words in the printing. And so then when I line up the pattern all together, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you line up the diamonds here, and then line up your colored cutting lines. You tape that, and you have your pattern. Okay. The other thing that I love about this pattern is it's going to be one of our go-tos for a lot of our partner charities, because it's in sizes all the way from 0 to 3 months, all the way up to an adult extra large. So if you're making, like, say, I want to make for 5 to 8-year-old kids, you just follow your green line, which is for 5 to 8-year-olds, and cut out on the green line and use this as your pattern. So it's a very good pattern. It's got 10 different sizes. It's scaled correctly. Got your 1-inch test block. So make sure you test that. And you're good to go. Now, I've cut out a bunch of these, and it's so easy for the single layer of hat. You just need a front and a back. So you lay your pattern down. The big thing is to make sure the stretch goes across your hat. And if you're doing gloves, make the stretch go around your hand. And so test your fabric to make sure you've got that stretch going here. Lay it down, cut it out. And then the next thing that I do is I make sure that I know what's the right side and the wrong side, because sometimes it's hard on fleece. But when you have a raw edge of the fleece and you pull on it, it'll curl to the wrong side. Fleece curls to the wrong side. So just to keep me honest here, I'm going to put a pin on the right side so I don't get confused. Now the hat's not as crucial, but when we get to the mittens that we're making tonight, there's 3 different pieces and you can get kind of wonky if you don't mark them. So just put a pin on the right side. Now, when you're sewing with fleece, use a needle that's appropriate, ballpoint needle. I've got a ballpoint 14N. You don't want to use a sharp because a sharp will break through the fibers. If you use the ballpoint, it kind of separates the fibers so you don't have any damage to your material. Now on your machine, I'm going to show you different ways to finish the edges. Let's do that right now. Polar fleece or fleece is really great because it doesn't ravel. So you don't really have to do anything to the seams. And so my first example is showing you just what a straight stitch is. A straight stitch is fine for this, unless you've got some area that has a lot of stretch to it, which our hats are pretty much okay, and so are the gloves, but this is just a straight stitch. You see that's working okay for that. Another option that you can use is a zigzag stitch. And this was sewn with a zigzag. Now it's going to be hard to see, but that's a tiny little zigzag here. And this gives a little bit more stretch to the seam. So if you want to use this as your seam finish, just make sure that your zigzag is narrow and not real wide, because a real wide is going to make a thick little lump in there that you don't want. But this is a good seam finish also, just a nice little zigzag. Okay. Now I also tried it on the serger, and the serger, I guess it's okay, but I'm not real thrilled with the serger for a couple of reasons. Number one, it makes a real thick lump here. And when you're working with the mittens and you got little areas, it gets kind of lumpy in the small areas. If you're working like on a coat or a large hat or something, I think that would be okay, but I don't know if I'd like to have the serger for mittens. Again, it's got good stretch, but it was hard to get this fed through there on the serger because of the thickness of the fabric. So it can be used in appropriate circumstances. Okay, this one's a sewing machine, Overcast. Now, go ahead and try the different stitches on your machine, but this was like really cool for some place that needed a good stretch. But again, the other thing I didn't like about it is it has a thickness here. Again, when we're working with our gloves, with our mittens, with our little areas, that takes up a lot of room in the thumb area. But it is a good stitch. That's my sewing machine Overcast stitch. Oh, a graded faux flat felt. Okay. When you're talking about seam allowances, graded faux flat felt seam, all you do is you sew a straight stitch. And when it says to grade your seam allowances, grading is a way of eliminating bulk on the seam allowances. It means you have a regular, one of your flappies is a regular length. And when you grade your seams, it means you go back and you trim that second one so it's not as high as the first one. That eliminates some of the bulk. And when you do a I can't talk tonight, a faux seam, I grade that, I'll flip this over, and then just do a straight stitch on the other side. And it looks like this on the right side, where you've got just the top stitching down. And on the back side, you've top stitched over the other seam allowance. So it does help keep those seams together. That would be an acceptable seam finish also. And then the last one I wanted to show you is a double top stitch. This is just it's sewn together. Then you flop both of the seam allowances to the back and then just top stitch one side down, then top stitch the other side down, which is if you're making a jacket or something with a long seam, that really eliminates a lot of the puckering and a lot of the bulk in there. So that's a good finish also. But I would say most of my hats are done just with a regular straight stitch. So I want to show you how easy it is to make the fleece fun hats. Okay, I've marked the right side. So first thing I'm going to do is put our right sides together. And if you have a walking foot, now's the time to put on a walking foot, because fleece is thick and it'll scoot around when you're sewing on it. So by the time you're done with your seam, you can have one end of it longer than the other end, and that's not a real good thing. So that's why you want to use a lot of pins or some good clips. Okay, that's one trick. My next trick is I don't really want to start right out the gate and try to get into the fabric, because that's like you're sewing uphill because of the thickness of the fabric. You can use one of these jigs or hump jumpers, but I like to just come in and start about an inch in on the fabric and then do a reverse and then come forward again, and it doesn't bunch up. Now, I don't have a walking foot, but one of the best investments I made are these cheap little, not cheap, I mean inexpensive little purple things. You get 2 of these in a pack, a purple thing. This edge is like a little thick square, and it's a 1/4 inch from here to here. So it's a 1/4 inch wide, and this side is just a poker, but I use it as a pusher as it's going through the machine, and it works real well. So what I'm doing is I'm laying it down to where I can see that I've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And as I'm coming towards it, I help push the fabric through. And you see it just goes real nice and easy through the machine. And that will take the place of a walking foot for me. But be careful, because you will be able to sew through this. Now, don't ask me how I know that, except that there's a lot of little chew marks on the end of this. Which I guess can't be helped, can it? But sew this top seam of the hat. Tack it just a little bit when you get to the back. And then we're going to do the other side just the same. Going ahead and put some pins in there so it doesn't shift. And if you've got these little clips, these are great. I'm sure almost all of us have them by now. Or clothespins or whatever you use. These just happen to be real user-friendly if you don't have a lot of coordination left in your fingers anymore to pull out pins. So I start about an inch in, come back, go forward, and then do my pushies. Okay, and now the next thing that we're going to do, well, I'm going to take my pins out before I stab myself with them. These were my markers for the right side. And you see we've got this little V up here waving at you. What you're going to do is pull your hat so these 2 seams line up here on top. And this is the seam that you stitch next. So I'm going to clip down that center top, and I'm going to start. And when you're doing the curve, if you on this curve, you can see right here's where the edge is. Now, if you sew just right off of here, it's going to make it kind of pointy. So you're going to want to take a little bit of a run at it and imagine where your seam goes. And your seam is going to come, let me see if I can get backwards. Your seam is going to come here, and instead of coming straight out here and making a point, we're going to come and we're going to sew just a little bit down into that curve. So we make more of a graduated curve on the hat, and it won't have little horns sticking up. Okay, so this is the one I'm going to do next. And my machine is, you can see here's where the edge is back here, but I'm going to come back and give it a little bit of a curvy run to it. So it's not as jagged of a start or a stop. Again, if you've got any kind of a pressing tool, a stiletto or purple thing, it really helps. I should have had somebody put me on the clock. Okay, now we turn it to the right side out. Your hat's almost done. All you gotta do is make your bottom hem. And for that, I suggest on your adult sizes about a 1-inch fold up. So what I'm going to do over here is fold this up about 1 inch and clip it all the way around, because clipping keeps the fabric from shifting. Okay, and so I'm going to do a cheater's way, one on each end, one in the middle. Now for sewing this hem down, because we don't have any ravel on here, you don't have to turn it over and then turn it over again. You can just turn it up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this bottom head with a zigzag. And my zigzag is going to go right down over the edge. Now, on your computerized machines, for you gals that got to computerize, go to your fabric advisor and use your fabric advisor and tell it that it's a knit and what kind of stitch you're using. And then it should be okay. But what I like to do is I like to override the presser, how much pressure there is down on here. So I like to loosen the stitch tension slightly. So it gives me a 5. I'm going to go down to about a 4.2. So there's not as much pressure on here. And also on the length of the stitch, I'm just going to increase the length just a little bit, because on fleece, it just makes a better ride. Now, when I'm stitching this zigzag, I'm going to put it to where I'm going right down the middle of this edge. So I'm going to do half the zigzag off and half on, off, on, off, on, off, on, going right down the center here. And what that'll do is that'll encase this edge here. It's not going to ravel, but it just makes a nicer finish for you. Zigzag will give it some stretch when they're putting it on their heads. So it's a win-win situation. And if you've got a speed control, I would recommend slowing down on this first couple times that you do it, until you get the hang of where things are and how to push your little helper along, so you don't stitch over it. So just a little bit more here. We'll get this rolling. Okay, snip my threads. And I'll go back and clean this up, but I just wanted to show you. What did that take? 10 minutes maybe? If even that. And so this is your basic beanie hat. Now a one layer hat like this is going to be okay for maybe our Florida program or somewhere where it's not freezing. But this is just awful adorable. Love it. Love it. And so lots of colors, lots of sizes, easy to sew. What's not to love? This is your basic fleece hat by Fleece Fun. Okay, now, if we were going to make this for a warmer climate, one layer's perfect. It's perfect. But if we're going to go someplace where we've got cold, 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 one layer's not going to cut it. So basically, if you want to make something lined, what you're going to do is you're going to make two hats. Now it's not as crucial on the hats it is on the gloves, but on the mittens, I recommend that you either make one of them a 1/4 inch larger or make one of them a 1/4 inch smaller. That way they'll slide into each other and match up better. But what I've got is this one sewn to the point of there's no hem, but it's sewn together. So you hold them in your hands. You've got the seams on both sides. And so what you do is just match them up and pull one over the other. And now you've got right sides together. And you'll stitch your right sides together. After you pinned it and after you put your clips, you'll stitch these right sides together and you'll leave yourself about 2 inches that you're not going to close it up, 2 inches so you can turn it inside out. And if you bear with me, I think I'm going to go ahead and do a little sewing. Let's go ahead and do one of those. So you can see how easy it is. I don't want you guys to be afraid to try this because it's just really super easy. I like these fleece hats. I know the crocheted and the knitted ones are really to be treasured because they take a lot of time. But if you do a fleece hat and you do it in good fabric and you take your time making it, I think it can be equally as appreciated. At least I think so. I like sewing. So there you are. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to my straight stitch for sewing it together. And I'm going to make my stitches longer and my pressure not as much pressure. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start about right here. Missed it. And we're just going to stitch our, most of these hats call for about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. But if you come out just a little bit off, just remember that for most of our partner charities, we need so many hats and so many mittens that if you sew it, there's going to be a head or a hand out there that'll fit it. So don't panic if yours comes out a little bit different from what the pattern calls for. Just make sure it's nice and it's neat. All right, I'm coming back up on my beginning. Here, a little bit of a back tack. Okay, and now all you do is just turn these right side out through that hole. And you've got two hats like Siamese twins here. And then all you're going to do is stuff one back into the other. And you have a double line, really warm fleece hat. Now, since we've got so much to do tonight, I'm not going to stitch this, but I'll just tell you how I would finish this. This hole here, I would like to just whip stitch this shut by hand. I think it makes a nicer finish. And then on your bottom seam here, take your fingers and roll this seam. Roll it in your fingers so you can feel the edge of it coming right out to the edge. Just roll that between your fingers. And you can feel that coming right out to the edge. And I clip that all the way around. And then what I would do to finish this off is about 3/4 or an inch. I would just go and put a zigzag top stitching all the way around. And that will hold these layers together. Plus, it'll let them roll it up if they want, or however they want to use it. So there's your 2-layer hat, 2 layers of fleece, or how about a layer of fleece and Sherpa? Or how about fleece and anything?
Kathy,
Yes,
can you sew that edge that you've rolled and just hem it there instead?
I can. And let me show you what happens.
Does it make it too wonky?
If I stitch this shot
All the way around.
all the way around, it comes out like this one. I guess that's okay. And that's what I did on this hat. And it's okay, but when I roll it up for like having a cuff, it just looks kind of a little bit goofy.
Okay, all right.
Because it's just so close here. It just kind of sticks out funny. And plus it separates, like if you're wearing it, it kind of separates, the fabric separates from each other. So you could, but I think a nicer finish would just to be just a quick little whip stitch on here, and then come down about an inch and do a zigzag all the way around, which makes it kind of like a faux cuff, so they can kind of turn it up if they wanted to. Okay. Maybe you can stitch better straight stitch than I can on here, but that's why I was suggesting.
No,
hand.
that was my question. Just didn't know if it would make
Yeah.
it look wonky or not, and it does. So I won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll do it once, like I did. Then you go, oh, okay, I forgot. Good question. Thank you. I was just teasing. You can do any way that you want to. But here's that same hat with 2 layers. It can be reversible, solid, to reversible print. But this is why I love this hat, because it's so versatile. And we can make a lot of them this way, but we can make them warm. Okay. Any questions on the basic fleece hats? We're good? Okay, so we did our lined hat, we did our single hat, we did our lined hat, and I got one more hat to show you. Everybody still with me?
I think we're good. Looks good.
All right. Now this hat is called, this is Fleece Hat by Easy to Sew. Fleece Hat by Easy to Sew. And what you'll find with this is you'll find a YouTube video where she tells you how to make it, because it's made from measurements. Okay. Now, most hat patterns are going to tell you, to measure your head, then use that for how you cut this out here. But if we're making for different people, we don't know what their head size is. I don't know how big is a head on a 10-year-old. I don't know. There is in my notes that I'm going to be posting later a little cheat sheet that tells you about how wide a head is. Since we're making these for such a variety of humans, we can make it variety of sizes. So adult women's are about 22, 1 to 3-year-olds is about 19. And so that will give you your first measurement for here. But the way that they show you on the video is they show you this on the video. They show that this is the width here at 22.5. Use head circumference 22.5. Place this on the fold with a stretch this way, and then cut it 13. So when it's opened up, it's actually going to be 26 by 22.5. So I don't know why they show you this, because this is kind of like a little strange to be folding your fabric up this way on the fold, because usually your fold's running here. But I just wanted to show you that if you just kind of think about it and make yourself a new pattern, it's not really a pattern, it's just a road guide. Basically, you're doing a rectangular that's 22.5 inches wide, and this is around your head. And you have 26 this way because you're going to be folding it in half. And you just need one of these. Okay, so what I would do is watch the video and stop, and then make myself a note that we're just going to do 22.5 for a woman's hat by 26 high. Okay, now we'll set those aside. Let's get this out here. So here's my material. Okay. You can tell that it's more stable this way, and it stretches this way. So this is my 22.5 this way, and this is my 26, that's the length. So the only thing you need to do for this is you need to sew one seam, once you get your numbers right. And what you're going to do is you're going to be folding the long sides together, and that's the seam that you're going to sew. So I'm going to pin this real quick. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. My cat got caught in here and she wanted out, and so she started scratching at the door. And so my husband lets her out. Now guess what? She wants back in. Oh, goodness gracious. So on here, you're just going to stitch that one seam as the long side. And I'm just going to do, since there's not going to be stretch that way, that's going to be the stable. I'm just going to sew a one long seam on it. And when I start, I'm going to start in on the fabric and then back up a little bit. And then do my forward again. This time, we're just going to make sure that we're matching the pins. And we can make a hat with one seam. All right, let me get you back down here where the action is. Sorry about that. You were watching me there for a minute. So all we've done is we've sewn this long seam. And the next thing that you do for this hat, now I probably would and should, let's take a minute and let's grade the seam allowances on here so it's not as bulky. And what I'm going to do is take a little bit off this one side. You can use your rotary cutter if that's easier, or use your scissors. But I love the fleece because it's not going to be ravelly. So we can take a little bit more liberties with it. Take a little bit of that seam allowance off. And that's what you call grading your seam allowance. Now, stick your arm all the way in there. Grab this end and pull this on top of it. And what you're doing is you're putting one inside the other to make your double layer of hats. Now this is going to be a nice and warm one when we're done too. Okay, up here at the top, this is where our seams will meet. And the next thing you want to do is just make sure this edge is matched up. Okay, now get that nice and smoothed out. And you're matching up that top edge. Oh, this feels so good. It's hard to imagine sewing winter stuff when it's hot out. You know what I mean? Because you've been crocheting, knitting them when you're hot and sweaty too. But if we can get ahead of some of our requests, we'll be able to help people out as they need it. So here's my basic hat. I've got my seams lined up here. This is the raw edge with all the 4 raw edges up here. And let me get my correct measurements. The next thing we're going to do is make our fringe. Now, I did a template. What this is a piece of paper folded in half and 1/2 inch marks all the way across. This is my template. What you could also do is use some blue easy release stick tape and do the same thing and mark that. But what I'm going to do is put this across on my hat. And I want to make sure that it's 3 inches in. So take your measuring, come back to make it a 3 inch. And pin that down. So we've got 3 inch fringe. Okay. Now the easiest thing to do with this, and all you guys who got warmed up on those fringe quilts, clipping them, you're ahead of the curve here because you know what's next. Take this fold here, clip it and stop at your guide. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to clip 1/2 inch. If it's hard for you to clip all 4 layers, come back and do 2 at a time. And so all you're doing is you're making the fringe at the top of the hat. Now you could eyeball this, but if you're like me, you'll have some that are thick and some that are thin. So it's really not that much work to make that template, because if you're planning on making quite a few, you're going to be happy that you have it. And normally you probably would have the hand grip strength to do all 4 layers, but I'm not there yet. All right, so then here's my underneath. Now, none of these hats really take a long time to do. And so that's why I'm really pleased that we can give you these patterns. Now, when we get down to the end here, that one goes up the side. So that's all it takes to make that fleece. Now, the pattern tells you to just go ahead and take this. This is like a 1/2 inch wide by 13 inches long. The pattern tells you just to come in around here and to tie this up. But I have a hard time getting that all nice and done right when I do that. So if you're having a hard time making your hat look good, remember these old long needles? I think this is from back in the day when we were making Cabbage Patch dolls, so that ages me quite a bit. This is a long needle, and I've got button and carpet heavy thread. And just what I'm going to be doing with this is I put a knot in the end of the 2 layers, and I'm going to just start anywhere and just doing a long running basting stitch around the hat. where I'm going to be tying over it later. It just gathers it up a lot, I think a lot nicer.
It
And it
would
gives
hold
you,
it together better for a longer period of time.
yes. Yes. Who is that? Tiffany's mom?
No, it's
No?
Big Mouth Leisha.
Oh, okay. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. I don't have my monitor on, so I can't see who's in the room.
That's okay.
Yes, it does. It holds it better for a longer period of time. Plus it distributes the gathers.
Yeah.
Plus you can tell in just a minute when I get done with this, it anchors it down.
Yeah.
And
I
you're
like
not gonna take this thread out. You're gonna leave this thread in.
exactly.
I think you probably would have good luck tying it up, but the first hat that I showed you as an example, that tie-dyed one, I just sewed that one up and used the fringe and then used the extra piece to just tie it without doing this thread basting. And it's okay, but I was not real happy with it. So you can see you're just taking nice big bites out of it. You're not doing tiny little bites. Oh, probably about an inch. And this is called a running stitch, a running basting stitch. Just around right underneath where you've cut that. And here I'm back at the beginning again. So I'm going to make sure none of my fringes are stuck, and I'm going to give this thing a real good pull. And I've got that real nice and tight, and see that just gathers up so nice. And hang on to the hat in your one hand. You've got your thread over here. It's like wrangling a big old fish or something. But here, wrap this around your hand so you got a good tight spot on it. And I've got my fringes all going down. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap right around that same spot 2 or 3 times and pull. So I've made that as tight as I can. And while I still have it tight, I'm going to take a couple of anchoring stitches and try not to catch your fleece flippies in there. Or take a couple of anchoring stitches. Come on. And then double knot back through them. Okay. And so
Another
that's
note, sorry
yeah.
to interrupt again, but what this does is if that fleece little tie thing breaks, you've got it sewn so well that if that other piece comes off, nothing's going to come apart.
Yes, we all know how hard sometimes kids and teenagers are on their things. So good point. So I've got my thread knotted real well, and I've made some securing stitches with it. When you come up, you come back through your loop and pull, and it makes like a little knot down in there. And that helps to keep that secured up. So come up, come through your loop and pull. So we've got our nice little tight thing going on. And now I'll clip it off. Oh man, that looks so much better. And to finish that and to camouflage where that was tied, I'm going to take my strip and come up around here and then just tie a big old knot in it and let these guys' tails just flip like the others. And if you happen to stretch it out to where it's bigger than what the rest of the gang is, just give it a little haircut. Oh yeah. And so that's your flippy fleece hat. Easy, easy, easy. And I love this because it's automatically a double layer. Now, word of caution, if you're going to be making these, I probably would stay with making these for the older youth and adults, because for the little children, we're really cautious about having things on there that they could pull off or eat or put in their mouth or cause them harm. So I probably wouldn't use this for the little children's hats. I'd go with the beanies that we just did and make those 2 layers. But I just think this thing, that's really cute. And if you want to, you can put a top stitching around here also. Okay, any questions on this one? Perfect. Now I know that I've been talking a long time. I just have couple more mittens to show. Do we want to go on for those? Is everybody okay?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. All right, you get that. Let me clean up just a little bit so I can get the other things out. Love it. And I love the soft fleece. Okay. Try your tape too if you don't want to do the template. Okay, intermission. Now, I've got 3 mitten patterns, and notice I say mittens. We're not attempting gloves because gloves involves all of these fingers. Number 1, that's hard to sew. Number 2, it's hard to fit. So if we're going to be sewing winter wear, we're going to be making mittens, okay? And I've got 3 very easy patterns for you. The first one we're going to make again, but this one is what I call, let me get my purple out. This is what I call the 3-piece mitten, where you've got a mitten top, a bottom, and then the outer side. And this is a hit. See that other one that I had that I showed you that was the bad pattern that we tested? It stopped about here. Well, I'm telling you, if you're out there in the freezing cold, you don't want the wind blowing up your wrist. So this is the Easy Fleece Mittens by Charmed by Ashley. And this is what we're going to make here in a little bit. It comes in adult sizes, small, medium, and large. Okay, love this pattern. Okay, now the next pattern is going to be Easy Mittens by Hello Sewing. And this one actually walks you through the process of lining a mitten. So if you have to do or want to do mittens for the cold, cold weather, follow this one. It's number 2 on the sheet. It's called Easy Mittens by HelloSewing.com. It's a lined 3-piece mitten. And it also comes in 3 sizes, but the sizes on this is a tween, small adult, and a large adult. So they can be worn like this, pulled up long, or they can be pulled back down in cuffs. But this is the lined mittens, okay? Now, just an aside here, if we have anybody that's asking us for water repellent mittens, we're probably going to go with this pattern, and we're going to make the outside out of PUL and then the inside out of fleece. And if we want to make it really warm, we're going to use some Pellon 975, which is a insulative like Pellon fleece. So we would have 3 layers. We'd have your PUL that makes it water repellent. We'd have the thermal insulated Pellon fleece in the middle, and then just a regular fleece in the inside. Okay, that's our pattern number 2. Now this one comes the same way. It prints out on different pages that you need to cut out and piece together, but it's very easy. The pieces, once they're taped together, this is the upper of the mitten. This is the lower of the mitten that you got to tape the little thumb on. And then here's the large piece, that's the back that you just tape the bottom to it. So all of these are easy to print, easy to find the patterns. And this one is the lined one. If you're going to make a lined one, you use this. Now the third one, I just want to show you, we're not going to make it tonight. This is the one that I'm suggesting for kids. This is a kid's fleece mitten by DIYcrush.com. And it comes in 3 kid sizes, a small, medium, and a large. And it's for toddlers, youth, and tweens. And it has both a template and a website YouTube video. So they have both ways to show you how to make it. And that's also on the sheet. But I don't know if I can fit my hand in here or not. But the reason why I like this so well is you see the way that thumb comes out instead of up. This is a very ergonomic mitten for children. Most of the patterns that you find that are done just a front and a back will have just like one thing like here. And it's not real comfortable for the kid because they don't really hold their hands like this. They hold them like this. So that's why I like this, because of the ergonomic thumb. Now, the way that this is written, it's shown to you with just 2 layers, the front and the back, but it'd be super easy to line this. Just remember, if you're going to line something, either make the outside a 1/4 of an inch bigger or make your lining a 1/4 of an inch smaller so they'll slide into each other. So this is super easy, recommending this for the kids and for the toddlers. I just had to. One of the things I wanted to show you about these finishes though, is this one is just a straight seam that I trimmed down. And then around the curved parts, like the curved part up here, I just did tiny little snips. I didn't cut through any of the stitches. We did tiny little snips up here and I reinforced the V here when we sewed. I reinforced it and snipped this. And if you can see how well this thing lays down. It just is really nice. It's got a nice finish up here. It's just nice and flat. So for kicks today, I thought, well, what would happen if I was to do a zigzag stitch on my sewing machine instead of a straight stitch? And a zigzag works okay, but look what I get. I get lumpy. I got old lumpy up here going around the front and the sides. I got lumpies going around the little points. Look at the difference in the points. Can you see them? So you might not have the perfect results the first time, but keep track of how you sew and what kind of seam finishes that are successful for you, and just keep going. Now, we're really not a big fan about putting embellishments on items because number one, you're limiting the type of human or age or what a human would like it, because obviously some rough and tumble little boy is not going to like a little pink heart, maybe. But you see, by adding this, it really limits who would pick this. But I tell you, every once in a while, I know I'm guilty. You just got to put just a tiny doodad. But the point here is, don't do this every time. You're going to limit who is able to get this glove, and that's not the point. The point is that we can get gloves for everybody there who needs it. And the other point I wanted to show with this is, don't put any doodads on, like things that'll stick off or hang off or bobbles. No buttons that can be picked off or chewed. We have to remember our safety for the kids, okay? But I wanted to do this to show you the difference in the seam finishes. You could see how wonky those tops are compared to this. Okay, that's the kids'
Kathy,
piece.
can I ask one question on those gloves though?
Yeah.
Is it okay to sew into the seams the clips that would keep them attached to each other? You know, like on gloves you buy, the clips that keep them as a pair.
It would probably depend on the partner charity. I imagine for kids, I don't see why not. Do you, Tiffany?
I don't. I'm just asking. I'm asking you if that's a thing.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with it, so I don't know. It sounds like a good thing. Has anybody done it?
Kathy Wargo might know the answer to that question.
I was just getting ready to say.
Yeah.
I happen to have some of those clips because I was going to use them for the mask, but then I changed my mind on that one. And what you really need to do is just sew a little tab in there because the clips themselves don't
Oh,
get sewn in. They just go
Okay.
through the little tab. So then they can make the choice of whether they want to put a clip on or not.
Okay.
so you just sew a little tab in here at the side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
then they
so
can decide whether
that
they
is
want-
that is an okay from our standards. That is an okay
Right.
thing safety wise to put on there because once they're on, they're not removable. They're not going
Yeah.
to.
The ones I had were really hard to get undone once you snap them. They're almost like those cam snap closures.
Yeah.
But they were binky holders,
Yeah.
pacifier holders is what they were.
Okay.
They did the same
Definitely
thing.
not. That question came to me through chat, so I just wanted to throw it out there. So if that's something you feel strongly about putting onto the children's gloves, so they stay a pair, they stay mated, or the kids can attach them to their jacket. I know, like I always attach them to my winter coat. You are free to add those to your children's gloves that you send to.
You
our-
would actually have to have a long ribbon.
I was going to say, maybe you could just do a ribbon.
I mean, you know, back when I was little, they had it was like almost like a cord or something. It actually went through the sleeves of both sleeves of your coat and held them in. You didn't lose them that way. But
So
yeah,
mine always just had like a little tiny tab, and it had
Right.
like a clip, just one
Right,
clip.
just a
The
clip.
two gloves went to each other, and then I could attach that clip to my
I'll
jacket.
look and see if I can find those clips while you're
Oh,
going on.
Yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there that if someone knows that what we're talking about, you are welcome to attach those. It's more something that I would see on ski gloves versus on this type of mittens. Like my $40 ski gloves versus this type of mitten, but you are welcome to attach those to these. It's not a forbidden item because it is not a choking hazard, because it would not be removable because you would be sewing it into the seam. We really don't want buttons. Those things that are purely decorative, that really don't have an added value. We don't want those kinds of embellishments on.
Yeah.
mittens. So I just wanted to throw it out there as you were talking
Yeah.
about embellishments. Thanks, Kathy.
Good question. Good question. And again, the embellishments are a hazard to the children, and embellishments can limit the type of audience that is good for it. And we don't want that. We want any child to be able to come up and pick up a pair of gloves and wear them. Now, this third pattern that I've chosen is Charmed by Ashley 3-piece mittens. Okay. And the reason why I'm doing the 3-piece for the adults is it seems to fit the adults real well. This is an adult small, and it's kind of tight on my hand, but you can see with this, I call it the opposable thumb gusset. They fit real well, and they can pick up things, and it's real maneuverable. So I've chosen the 3-piece patterns for the adults and the 2-piece patterns for the kids. And again, this comes in 3 sizes. There's the man's, the woman's, and the tweens. Now, wouldn't this just be cute if you made like matching hats to go with these? Okay. But we're going to make one because there's a little trick to that thumb. And so I want to do one real quick with you. Again, this is Charmed by Ashley. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be downloading your pattern pieces. And these tell you tape A and B together. So here's B. So you're going to be cutting them out and taping those together. So you have the back. And then we have C, which is the top part of the thumb. And then there's just one little quirk on this pattern. Here's the other two. It's D and E. These two get sewn together. Listen to me. These two get taped together. But I want to show you something real quick. I let her know about this, so hopefully she can fix it. On this pattern piece E, it has the little tape on the bottom for the matching, and it's supposed to be up here at the top. But you would see that when you go to put that together, you can see how your seam allowances are on the wrong sides. So just turn it around. All this is just a rectangle of fabric. I mean, just a rectangle. So just turn it around and match it. And there's your D and E together. Okay. So I've cut this out. I got too much stuff here. There we go. I've cut these out, and when I cut my pattern out, I put a little reminder up here of the arrow going across the stretch. And I wrote stretch on all 3 of my pieces so I could remember that this is the glove and we need the stretch going around. So I cut out these 3 pieces. You have 2 of each, obviously. You have to have a left and a right. And the first thing I do is I mark mine to what the right side and what the wrong side is. And you can tell because the fabric curls to right or wrong. Uh-oh. It curls to the wrong
Right.
side.
Wrong side.
You got sleepers.
No, I couldn't get to the unmute button fast enough.
So I just take my pen and I mark the right sides. On this large piece, it's not going to be that much of a problem because it's just the same for both. But on these 2, you really want to mark your right and your wrong sides because you don't want to end up with having 2 left hands. So again, my fabric curls to the wrong side. So I'm going to mark the right and the right. This gray isn't bad because you can see one side's light and one side's dark. But some of those solid colors are really bad. You can't tell hardly at all. So I'm marking all of my right sides. And now I've got things that look like this. So one of these goes with one of these, and you want to make sure you have the one that goes the right direction. Take the one with the right side and match it to the one with the right side and match those thumbs. Okay, so now we know that we've got them going the right direction. Now here's the only tricky thing about this pattern, which is not that big of a deal. When you go to sew this pattern, how can I show you? You're going to start here. You're going to sew to the corner. You're going to reinforce this V because that's where it gets clipped. Then you're going to go around the thumb and you're going to stop right across from where you started on the other side. Okay, so I'm going to pin that out. And for this one, because I need a little bit more exact of where I'm going, I'm going to take something like this and try to go across from where I started. And I'm going to put a stopping pin. Okay. And that's as complicated as it needs to be. Just put your stopping pin there. Then pin your pieces together. And we're going to see if my machine can eat this or if it's going to behave tonight. So I want a stretch, straight stitch. And I want to loosen up my tension. And I want to lengthen my stitches. Okay. And I need my purple people eater thingy here. Okay. And why don't I just go ahead and start over here. And what you're going to do is just take a couple of starting stitches and then just do a back tack. And now we're going to stitch around that thumb. I'm going to use my guide on my purple thing. That's the name of it, purple thing. That 1/4 inch guide, I'm going to have that down here. And I'm just going to stitch a straight stitch around my finger. Now you can probably get enough tension with your purple thing, but I like to take my fingers and put it on here, and I'm going to help guide my fabric around, but I don't want to stretch it out of shape. So I'm going to give it a suggestion of turning with my fingers when I get to that point. But here's my 1/4 inch. I'm coming around and I'm gently helping it around that corner with my fingers. And then I'm going to come down to this V, come down, I'm going to back up. Come on, back up. Lift up, pivot with your needle down. Take a couple stitches, back up to join it, and then just go straight. And we're just going to go straight off the fabric. And that's what you've got. You've got this sewn like this with your thumb here. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to grade these seams just a little bit. And I'm going to snip in the V, but I'm not going to snip through it. We're just going to cut a little release there. Maybe trim that out just a hair. And then around the thumb, since this is an area that's going to have a lot of activity going on inside, I grade my seam allowances. I cut this one down, then come back and cut this one just a little bit past that, kind of like I'm trimming hair. Make an old mess. And cutting my thread. Okay, now that is my back side, and I take one of my tops now, and I take the right side of the top. Where are we here? Take the right side of my top and put the right side of the mitten on top of it. Okay, starting at the top, I'm going to do a little shakedown there and get this guy all pinned up. Clipped up. And for those of you that sew without clips, I think you're going to want to try to do this with clips. It's just so much easier. But where I wanted to show you is down here at the thumb. We're matching up our seam here. But the way that we approach this thumb is we're not just going to ram through and sew the whole thing. What we're going to do is we're going to start here. We're going to come up, and right at this point where this thumb intersects here, I'm going to put a pin because that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop. So here's the thickness of my mitten. We're going to go here. And that's where I'm going to sew first. Okay, so this is your stopping point, right where all of this met up here in the middle. You're going to stop. You're not going to sew into that thumb. You're going to stop. In fact, it's pretty easy if you come and you fold that mitten thumb up. And remember, get your threads and whatnot out of the way. Get your seam allowance kind of done up pretty good. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start out in reverse, and I'm going to stitch back to that pin and stop, and then come forward. Pull my pin, and now I'm going to sew my seam down to the end of the glove. Mitten. It's not a glove thingy, it's a mitten. Okay, so then the next thing we do is we fold that thumb down, and you see where it's been sewn right here. We're going to line it up and put a pin right up next to, but not over, that point where we sewed. Okay, so then our next thing that we do is we sew the other side of the glove, and we'll stop when we get to, I'm hurrying a little bit, so don't, because I know we're running a little long. So do as I say, not as I do, okay? Except don't run over your fingers. Get my thingy out again. There he goes. Again, I'm going to set my fingers down on the curve. I'm going to hold down like a little sponge here with my purple thing. And we're just going to help it around that corner. I don't want to pull or tug because that's going to make that ripple. So I just want a nice smooth going around the corner. And now we've got our thumb. Pull your thumb down and you can see there's the point right here where it intersects that I'm going to stop. I don't want to sew up into there, but you can feel where that lump is. So we're going to come right up to the pin where I pinned it and then back tack it. And that's how you do that thumb so it's not caught. Again, I'm going to go back and clip that, but I just wanted to show you that when this gets turned right side out, you can use your chopstick or whatever you need to get the thumb. And here's my mitten. Okay, and I did not sew through any of this, but it's still, you can see that it's closed up because I came up to here and stopped, and I came up to here and stopped. So we've got a nice little opposable thumb on the mitten. And now to finish this, which I'll go ahead and do that when we're off camera here, you're just going to turn that up about 1 inch and do a zigzag around here like we did the bottom of the hat so it has stretch. And that is your 3-piece mitten. If you're going to line it, just remember how we did the hat. You're going to make 2 of these. Either the outside is a 1/4 inch bigger or the inside is a 1/4 inch smaller. Then you're going to put them right sides together with one inside of the other with right sides together. And you're going to stitch, leaving about a 2-inch opening, pull them out, and then turn the other one back into the glove and go ahead and close up your opening and top stitch. Oh, I'm tired. Okay, anything else I forgot to tell you? I don't think so. I think I talked too much tonight, actually. Embellishments, fleece hat, pom-pom. And on your sheet that's going to be in Facebook tonight, at the very end, there's some supplemental sheets that I have made that will show you how to make a fleece pom-pom, and also have a chart for the head sizes. And also there is a tip for working with fleece from Craftsy. So any questions on our 3-piece mittens?
One question in the chat is, would you consider putting elastic at the edge of the large mitten so they fit a bit tighter and keep the wind and snow from falling inside?
I did make a pair that had elastic, and that was the shorter mitten because your wrist is right here. So for these longer ones, I didn't think they needed them because they came up. Here's my wrist, and here's where they actually end up here. Okay, but for the shorter mittens, I did do elastic, but what they recommend elastic is if you have a lining and then you put the elastic on the lining and then put the top on it. Because if you just sewed elastic in here, it's going to rub on your hand. Okay, so yes, it is possible to put elastic in, but I would use it on a mitten that has a lining so I can sew the elastic into the lining so it doesn't rub on my cuff. If you think you need it, that's fine. But the reason why we picked these mittens like we did is that they are longer. Even this 3-piece lined one comes up quite a ways. Here's my wrist, and I still have all of this here. So good question. I wasn't really feeling the elastic on these long ones, but maybe
Yeah, no,
Um,
I mean, I know like the reason you wear put long ones like that is because then you can tuck them inside your coat.
yes,
So you wouldn't
Yeah.
need, you wouldn't need the elastic. So
yeah,
yeah, I like the longer ones better. That's a good pattern switch.
yeah, yeah. We did. We had the short one up there for a while, but I think either Tiffany's taking it off or it's going to be off. But I just didn't like that short one for that reason. There's let too much air come in. So thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I talked a long ways tonight, but we had a lot of ground to go over. And I will get this online so you can have it. Please bookmark it when you find it so you can refer back to it. But a good class tonight. Thank you for spending your evening. Appreciate it.
I'm gonna